Hi guys, Kim here and welcome to another Coffee with Kim episode. So today we're talking about something I'm very passionate about, which is why we are not as simple as just calories in versus calories out. So I'm going to be helping you understand and answer this question of why am I not losing weight even though I seem to be in a calorie deficit? So if you're somebody who's currently in the process of trying to learn about your body, you're trying to understand more about the energy that you get from food and how we get this energy balance of energy in and energy out, and you're kind of feeling stuck and perhaps it's been working for a while but now it's not, well, this is going to be a really good episode for you. But before we jump into that, I just want to quickly explain the motivation for me behind doing these episodes. So if you haven't been following me and you don't know much about my backstory, I actually struggled with disordered eating and body dysmorphia all throughout my teens, probably from age 14 up to 21. And I wished looking back that I had access to the right information. Back then, I was getting my information from Fitspos, I was getting it from the internet, from magazines. It really wreaked havoc on my health and I didn't know where else to go. And that's actually why I ended up doing nutrition, because it didn't matter where I looked, I just kept getting really confused because what I was reading and learning just wasn't working for me. And this calorie equation was one of those things that really didn't work for me, and I'll talk a bit about that in this episode. But I guess what I want from Coffee with Kim is to provide a place where you can get access to knowledge, information, stuff that I wished I had back when I was struggling with my relationship with food. I'm really, really lucky now. I've had the opportunity to learn nutrition it's been 8 years now, and I've done so much study around how the body works. I know how the body works now. I even know how the mind works a lot more now that I've done NLP. And these tools to this day help me stay grounded and not get sucked into new diet fads. But I understand if you don't have that knowledge, if you don't know how your mind works and you don't know much about physiology, it's really hard to not get confused with different pieces of information and to constantly second guess yourself. And that's what I want to break. I want women to feel really confident in their eating patterns and to ultimately become their own mind and body expert. So that's a bit about why I'm doing these episodes. And if you're the kind of person who likes to help others and you find these really helpful for yourself, I would love for you to share these with a girlfriend, or your mum, your sister, any woman. Doesn't even have to be a woman. I talk a lot more about, I'll be talking more about women physiology, but also kind of universal principles in these episodes too. So please do pass them on to anybody who you think would benefit from them. Let's jump into this episode, okay? Motivation behind this episode was partly from my own experience with dieting, but also just from clinical experience. I have so many women come to me in a state of feeling stuck and confused because they're trying to lose weight by getting into this calorie deficit, usually using like a fitness app, or they have gotten a body scan that's worked out their basal metabolic rate, and then a fitness instructor's given them a meal plan based off of that. So this whole like calories in, calories out thing, you'll kind of get exposed to that in two places from what I've seen. So it's these fitness apps, but then also like transformation programs where they have these fancy scales that supposedly work out how much energy you need each day. And the scales that you jump on that work out do work out your muscle mass are definitely more accurate than an app, but as you'll learn in this episode, there's neither of those are accurate enough. Well, we'll look at why the calorie equation on fitness apps isn't very accurate. We're going to be looking at factors outside of food and exercise that impact your metabolism, which you may not be accounting for, and I don't believe all fitness coaches account for these factors outside of food and exercise either. So I want you guys to know, so that even if you are doing a fitness challenge, you've got a fitness instructor who's doing their best and giving you meal plans, at least, like, there may not be anything wrong with that food, as long as you know that there are more factors outside of your energy out and your food in that can impact how your body changes. And then we'll be looking at, I'll be sharing with you how I personally help clients find energy balance without relying on this calorie equation. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. I'm going to tell you my story where I learned that there must be more to do with energy balance than calories in, calories out. So I think it was around 14 where I got hit with diet culture, and I injured my hip. I was really active. I was really enjoying running, and I learned that running, well, it's kind of obvious. I think by the time you get to 14, you learn that, running, burns calories and it keeps you fit. And through running, I got really lean, and I got a lot of people saying, like, oh, you look really fit and healthy. And I made this association, right, between being in a small, lean body and people saying, yay, well done. So I got into a lot of trouble when I injured my hip, and this meant that I couldn't run. And so that was what triggered me to re-look into food, because I thought, well, if my running has been controlling my weight, I now need to really control my food. So that's what started me getting really into trying to understand the whole calorie balance. And luckily I was able to get my hip to the point where I could not just do running, but I could do a bit of running and mix that with cycling and swimming. So cycling and swimming are a lot easier on your body. And I jumped at this opportunity to jump into triathlon training because I was like, yeah, if I can do all this cardio, that's going to be so beneficial for weight balance. And so then I combined this newfound knowledge I had from these calorie counting apps and this ability for me to now train the way I wanted to. I did actually really enjoy cardio, and then I was like, great, it's a win-win. But what started to really confuse me was I was plugging into this app. I think I read somewhere in some diet book that we need 1,200 calories. This is very low, by the way, but I read somewhere that you should be having 1,200 calories a day as a female athlete who wants to be lean and win at running or something along those lines. It would have been some random blog, but anyway, that sticks in your head as this is the number. And so I was, making sure that I wasn't having any more than 1,200 calories. But then I was also typing into this app the amount of exercise I was doing. And strangely enough, every day it looked like I was actually in a deficit of about 500 calories or more. And according to what I was reading, then the equivalent to me losing about a kg of body fat or a kg of weight per week. But was I losing a kg of weight per week? Absolutely not. I actually stayed stable, and it didn't seem to matter how much more I exercised, and I just kept roughly staying the same weight. And then I went to uni, and I was trying to find out like the why behind this, and they just kind of kept saying, well, you must be eating more, like that's impossible, like we know this equation, and if you're in a 500 calorie deficit, you should be losing this much. That's when I realized like there must be something more going on here. And since that experience, it's really developed this passion to understand the human body more. And I noticed that when I went even into clinical practice, that I wasn't the only one experiencing this. And I was working with a range of different bodies, a range of different people who are some eating barely anything, some eating quite a lot. So back in the day, I used to get people to track on this app called Fat Secret, just to look at what they were eating and why they weren't feeling as good as they wanted to. And so I did go through a period of really understanding people's energy intake, and I noticed again there was no clear trend between energy in versus energy out. I had some women who were eating barely anything, eating like 800 calories a day and exercising well, and their weight wasn't budging. And then I had, you know, other women who were having, say, 2,000 calories a day and weren't doing much exercise, but they were perfectly weight stable. And if you would put that into an app, like, they technically would have been eating too much. So kind of what I learned about my body, I then saw the same issues happen in other people when I went into clinical practice. So how is this possible? Like, how is this happening? And maybe you yourself have gone down this track and gotten stuck. You know, what I find is really common is the calorie deficit can work initially for people, but it usually, from what I've seen, stops after a while. So let's look at why. Okay, why the calorie equation on fitness apps are not very accurate. So first of all, how they work out the food calorie values aren't totally accurate in themselves. So when you're trying to measure like how much energy you're going to get from a food and then the effect that has on your body, we can't just look at like the total calorie number, because when it goes into your body, different foods have different, we call it thermic effects. So for example, protein and fiber have a relatively high thermic effect, which means that you burn more energy just breaking down these foods. So say if you had 100 grams of protein versus 100 grams of just like refined sugar, perhaps the calorie number on these foods is the same, but what happens in your body is different. You're going to actually burn more energy breaking down the protein. So that's one example. So we can't just look at the numbers. We have to look at what type of food are you actually consuming and what is the net energy effect, you could say. The second one is the basal metabolic rate that, say, MyFitnessPal uses to work out your energy expenditure isn't accurate. So we need to factor in, how they work out like a basal metabolic rate is through a calculation that looks at your weight and your height. And it gives you a rough estimate. But that doesn't actually factor in your muscle mass and the health of your liver and your gut. Like I said earlier, the machines that can work out your muscle mass are a little bit more accurate for determining that. But an app certainly does not know your muscle mass, that's for sure. So we've got to watch out for that. The last one, this is very important, and this is probably going to potentially devastate some of you, because I was shocked and a bit gutted when I found out about this. When it comes to the energy that you expend with exercise, the fitter you get, the more efficient you get. So overall, you end up burning less, and you also end up saving yourself energy expenditure during the day. So before I started running, I might have typed in a 10K run, and that might have come out at, say, 700 calories. But then as I get fitter and fitter and fitter, I'm going to actually be burning less. And not only that, but your body has this incredible ability to adapt to stresses. So if you're doing a lot of exercise during the day, your heart rate will also drop during the day when you're resting. So here's the catch. Here's the thing with exercise. Your body is designed so that you can exercise and increase your exercise and stay weight stable. We are physiologically designed to stay weight stable. So it's such a common trap. And Please don't make the same mistake I did, because I was determined to beat this system, and I ran myself into the ground, like, pardon the pun, but I was doing like 24 hours of cardio a week, and yeah, my weight just didn't change. And I've seen it happen to other people as well. You get really tired, you sleep more, even your appetite doesn't even increase that much. And those of you who have done a lot of cardio or pushed yourself to that point, like, you'll agree with me, like, you would expect, say you'd burn 3,000 calories in a day, you don't then feel like eating 3,000 calories that day. It just doesn't work that way. Your body gets more efficient. So we've got to take that into consideration. Where it's a little bit more complicated is with exercise, is where strength training does increase your metabolism if it builds your muscle. Okay, that is one thing that does increase your metabolism. But in saying that, it's actually really difficult to build muscle. Trust me, I've tried. I'll post up some bodybuilding photos at some stage. So if you're following me on Instagram, I can show you. But I trained like 2 hours not 2 hours a day. All the recommendations for building muscle, and eating all the carbs and the protein, and it's not that easy to build lots of lean mass, especially for women. So overall, like, the message I want to get across is, you can't just type into a calorie app, I'm doing like 10k run and I'm doing this HIIT class, and expect that to stay accurate as your fitness changes. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so now let's look at factors outside of food and exercise that impact your metabolism, which we need to account for. So this is why we can't just look at your food and the exercise out. But now you've learned that even those aren't that reliable either. Okay, let's look at, and I've learned a lot more about this just in the last couple of years as I've gone more into the holistic health space. So the first one I want to talk about is physical and mental stress, okay? So sleep deprivation and exhaustion. Sleep deprivation, which leads to exhaustion. This is what I'm going to call physical stress. And everything has an impact on your body, but mental stress, I'm talking about like the negative self-talk, anxiety, like poor mental health. So when you're under stress, both physical and mental stress, it puts your body in a state of fight or flight mode. And this is not a efficient state to be tapping into your body fat stores. When you're in a high stress state, your body feels like it's under attack, and it's going to want to hold on to all its reserves as much as it can. And I see this a lot in women who are trying to do it all, who are trying to keep up the job, look after the kids, keep the house tidy, plan everything, be the best friend, look after the appearance, just so much stress. And then they throw, HIIT training and trying to have a perfect diet on top of that, and then they wonder like why their body just isn't changing. And I'm not the first one to figure this out. Dr. Libby talks a lot about this in all her books, is the power of stress and stopping people from tapping into their body fat stores very well. And I want to talk about this because one of the biggest pain points I hear my clients come to me with is this constant question of why is it not working? Why? Why is this not working for me? And it's the why questions, or this should be working. I should be smaller. I should be losing weight. So bringing the NLP side of it into it. So NLP, we learn about the power of certain words on our emotions. Words like why and I should, these don't tend to make us feel very good. Think about it for yourself. When is saying, oh, I should be doing this, or oh, why am I doing this? When does that even create a good feeling? Normally they create feelings of shame, guilt, or anxiety. Okay, so what I want you to get from this is understanding, well, first of all, that's just a tool in itself. So you've just learned that the words that you're using in your head can impact how you feel. But you've also learned that you could be doing all the right things, but if you're in such a high stress state, your body's just not going to let go. Okay. So the other thing that the calorie equation doesn't account for is the shift in your metabolism that happens through a woman's menstrual cycle. So if you're a man listening to this, obviously this doesn't apply to you. But yeah, menstrual cycles are really interesting. I haven't talked too much about menstrual cycles over the last couple of years. Honestly, probably because I myself have actually been on contraception, so I've never really experienced having a cycle properly until the last year. And now, obviously, I'm a lot more interested in it, and it's been really, I mean, I've known the science about it for the last 5 years, but it's been really cool to actually see, witness and experience firsthand, like the shifts that happen throughout the month. And I've certainly experienced this shift in metabolism that happens in the 2 weeks leading up to your period, and you get hungry, so your temperature increases, and that means that you're burning more energy during the day, regardless of anything else. So literally just by having higher hormones during those 2 weeks, you will be more hungry and you'll be burning more energy. And that's not factored into the calorie equation. And then the other ones that I don't have time to go into lots of depth today, but I'm definitely going to mention them. So your liver health, your liver health and your thyroid health. These are 2 huge ones. So if you are eating really healthy during like Monday to Friday, and you are exercising really hard and regularly, but then it gets to the weekend and you're drinking, or you're doing drugs, or you just have like a processed food binge, or perhaps if you are relying on a lot of Panadol, or if you're stressed, okay, all of these things will load your liver. And when your liver is loaded, it can't do one of its main jobs properly, which is metabolism. Okay, so if you've got a sluggish liver, you'll find that it's a lot harder to tap into your body fat stores. And then you've got your thyroid health as well. So one of the biggest mistakes women make is they will eliminate all carbohydrates, and this can cause a situation called hypothyroidism. And if your thyroid hormones aren't converting properly, it'll be also a lot harder to shift body fat. Okay. But before we go into this final section of how I help clients find energy balance, I also just want to say that one of the biggest issues I come across is women also thinking that their healthiest weight is going to be their favorite weight. So we really need to also, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, so only you know deep down if what you're striving for is going to be like the healthiest version of you versus just like the favorite body. But it is something that I think is really common because of the high expectations that women see on social media, the sort of bodies they compare themselves to. It's really easy to fall into this trap of thinking that you're not enough because you haven't got abs. And yeah, and honestly, like it's your healthiest weight shouldn't feel like a huge struggle. If it is, then it could be one of these systems that you're not supporting. Like I mentioned, it could be your stress axis, it could be the liver, it could be the thyroid. It could be those things. There also is a chance that your body's trying to tell you that tiny weight that you're trying to get to, it is not your healthiest weight. But that's not an easy pill to swallow, and I understand it's not that simple, which is why a huge part of what I do is also helping women with their body image. But that's definitely for another session. Okay, so how do I help clients, find energy balance and, find their healthiest weight without relying on a calorie equation? So there's three key things, and I know that you know this already, these three things, but I'm going to tell them to you again, because just because we know these things doesn't mean that we make them a priority. So this is your reminder to go back to your basics and to at least try these things first, and then to carry on watching the episodes moving forward, because something I'm also really passionate about is teaching people how to adopt these simple principles in modern day society. I'll give you an example. So the first thing that I help people do is adopt a more whole food way of eating. Okay, that includes protein and healthy fats, because these are things that help with that thermic effect, and it helps keep you full and nourished, and it supports a whole food diet, supports those systems such as your liver and your thyroid and your gut health. The catch, and you know this, right? Like, I know that you know this, but the catch is, and this is what I've learned from actually coaching people, is we don't live in a world in an environment where it's just easy to eat a balanced whole food diet for a number of reasons. Firstly, like, to eat more whole foods, you need to be more organized, don't you? You need to learn how to cook. You can't rely on takeaways all the time. You need to know how to navigate a supermarket, because there are so many different, foods that are labeled as healthy and whole food, and yet on the back of the packet they're filled with processed ingredients. But you're busy and you don't have the time, and so you see these health claims and you're like, oh, this must be good. So we've got advertising thrown at us, we've got convenience to work through. Women are, we've got this new generation of like the female entrepreneur or the female career woman, and learning to cook can just seem like a pain in the ass. And it can feel like you don't have time for that. So I know that that you need to eat more real food, but I also know that it's not that simple, and that's why I do coaching. But we can also talk about strategies for that in these sessions, in these talks as well. Okay, so yes, I help them adopt more of a whole food way of eating. Second of all, I help women to reduce their physical and mental stress. So I didn't used to look so deeply into simple things like sleep and negative self-talk, but I've learned that these are major factors. I talked about that at the beginning of this episode, that one of the biggest reasons why you could be exercising and eating well and not seeing any results is because of the physical and mental stress that you're under. So for some women, like, we literally spend a month just working on how to remove some of this negative internal dialogue and get their basic self-care back in, things like sleep, things like me time, because it's not until we get these things back in that their body system can just like calm down and relax. And maybe right now that you are sitting in this like chronic like high stress state, and your subconscious mind has been telling you for a while like something needs to change, like you need to slow down in some way, you need to just get back to like sleep, like the basics, like sleep, water, food. It's amazing how quickly those things can disappear. And it's not your fault, it's the environment that we live in. We're trying to do everything, and we've got disruptions to our, innate intelligence. So, for example, we have phones. Like, our phones are with us all the time, and it's so tempting to scroll social media before we go to sleep. Like, who knew, like, just getting good sleep could be so hard? It is, in this day and age, it is, you know. It wasn't once upon a time where it was traditional to just, watch sunsets and watch sunrises, and there was no digital stuff. You didn't get sent emails at 10 o'clock at night. You know, if you're not finding that you're able to get your basic self-care in, like sleep, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that it's hard. It's definitely hard. Even I struggle with it. You know, I have all this knowledge, and even I struggle sometimes to get the basics. So that is now a big focus of my coaching. So far we've got learning how to adopt a more whole food way of eating, and learning how to reduce our physical and our mental stress through adopting self-care routines, and learning how to ditch the negative dialogue. And lastly, I help women to eat intuitively and mindfully. Now, there's a reason why I put this last, and it's because I have a slightly differing opinion to the traditional, like, intuitive eating, like the intuitive eating model. So that's like a model in itself, and which is amazing, and I love that. I personally have found, working with the type of women that I work with, that they really benefit from having this good base of good food and self-care routine before we try and throw the intuitive and mindful eating into there. So it's always something that we talk about, that I do talk about at the beginning, but I think for some people, they will try and do intuitive eating and mindfulness before they know anything about food, and before they even look at self-care routines. And when you're trying to eat intuitively, and I'm sure that you can resonate with this, when you're trying to eat intuitively in a state of undernourishment, you're almost hooked on sugar, you've got a lot of negative talk, and you're not getting any sleep, like, in that state, like, you will 100% intuitively go for the wrong foods. So I help people get the foundation first, and then always add the intuitive eating component. Now, the reason why we need this intuitive eating component is because we don't want to be stuck on calorie counters all the time. They don't work, as you've learned. Like, there's too many inaccuracies for them. But we still need to be able to adjust our food based on what's happening in our body. And the best way to do that is to actually ask your body. You know, for example, during that high hormonal phase of your period, like, when you notice that you're hungrier and you seem to be craving carbs, you can listen to that and be like, hey body, like, what's going on? Like, what do you need? And your body will usually communicate with you quite well. And if you are eating a mostly whole food diet, and you're rested, often you can get really good answers from your body when it tells you those things. But again, I think it also helps you having the knowledge. So then you can, calm your mind, So when you are hungrier or craving carbs around that time, for example, you can say, well, I know what this is because I've learned about how hormones work. I know that my metabolism's up, and I know that I need a bit more carbs during this week. So I think there's a really nice balance between having the knowledge around what's going on in your body, but also adopting intuitive eating, mindfulness. Mindfulness is the key one. It's this awareness. It's this ability to pause, to check in, to ask the right questions. I do believe this is so key, but I also believe that they all go really beautifully together. So those are my three, and that brings us to the end of this episode. So if you've found this helpful, please let me know, and I will see you either next week or the week after. See you next episode, guys.